But it's across every single industry. So NIH, we've got 8,000 major conflicts of interest in researchers. FDA, we've got 75% of the FDA's drug budget coming from pharma, not taxpayers.
Hello and welcome to the Doge and Maha News channel. My name is Chris. In today's video, we're going to focus on Make America Healthy Again, and we're going to watch part of an interview that Megyn Kelly has with Dr. Casey Means, the author of Good Energy, and she's going to talk about the conflicts of interest that are within the government and medical communities. So let's go ahead and check that out. Also, before we get started, if you're interested in Dr. Casey Means' book, Good Energy, I do have a link below. You can check that out. That is an affiliate link, and I will get a small commission if you do use that link, which I really appreciate it. All right, so let's get into the content. Here we go.
So you look at some examples. NIH, taxpayer funded institution that we would ostensibly believe is its sole interest is to keep Americans healthy. But 80% of NIH researchers have a conflict of interest with industry, so are getting paid also by processed food industry, pharmaceutical industry. There was a report that came out that 8,000 NIH funded researchers have a major conflict of interest with industry. So
that's pretty crazy. So she's saying that 80% of the people associated with the NIH, or the National Institute of Health, have some kind of conflict of interest, either with big food or big pharma or big agriculture. Somehow they're getting paid also by those industries, and yet they're trusted to be part of the National Institute of Health. Man, that NIH... obviously, Dr. Fauci is a big part of the NIH as well, and we all know that he's likely corrupt. But man, it sounds like the rest of the agency is corrupt, or at least has some strong conflicts of interest. Let's hear some more.
We would assume that would just be clean money from the NIH, from taxpayers, with a singular goal of American health. But
That's right. That's what I always assumed. I always figured the NIH and these agencies had our best interests at heart, that they were like focused on the health of the American people, our health and safety, and they were concerned about that. But it sounds like they're more concerned about their own pocketbook, their own agendas. And so that trust is gone.
Fact, it ends up becoming a PR arm to do scientific research that's mostly focused on pharmaceutical interventions and our standard conventional model of care, which is very reactive and very...
A PR arm of the pharmaceutical company that is mostly focused on basically selling pills and drugs.
Sick care and not focused on root causes. Then you go to the USDA,
just to jump in on that, Casey, jump in on that. So basically you're saying with the FDA or the NIH, the people who are looking at our food and what's okay and what's not okay, suffer from the same conflict as the FDA did in Dope Sick, as evidenced by that movie, where the opioid industry got going because the people who were deciding whether that could be safe and marketed as non-addictive, or whatever the initial disclaimers were, they're on the take. They either are getting money from these drug companies, or in the case of the food industry, these big food manufacturers, or they're banking on joining those companies immediately after their government stint is over.
That's a good point. They're banking on joining these industries. So they're basically shills for these industries so that they can get a really good job when they get out of this government role. So they're going to basically, they're already thinking about, okay, a big paycheck, getting to be part of the board of some big pharmaceutical company or something like that. So let me go ahead and do everything that they want so that I can get this big job when I get out of this government role.
Right. I mean, you see this all the time with the revolving door between, FDA commissioner and then pharmaceutical company right after they finish. Gottlieb, FDA, straight to Pfizer. It's just back and forth.
Right.
But it's across every single industry. So NIH, we've got 8,000 major conflicts of interest in researchers. FDA, we've got 75% of the FDA's drug budget coming from pharma, not taxpayers. USDA...
75% of the FDA's budget is coming from pharma, not taxpayers? Wow, that sounds like a big conflict of interest. I'm sure they're approaching it like, oh, we're just interested in America's health. That's why we're donating so much money to the FDA and research. That's not true. They're more interested in getting these drugs approved so that they can sell a bunch of drugs.
We've got 95% of the people who made the USDA food guidelines for America, which come out every 5 years, so from 2000 to 2025, had major conflicts of interest with the processed food industry. You look at medical schools, you've got medical schools receiving huge multi-million-dollar grants from pharmaceutical companies. When I was
Medical schools receiving huge grants from pharmaceutical companies. So is there going to be a conflict of interest? Are the schools going to be more likely to do training and education around how to use drugs to treat illnesses instead of things like food and exercise and living a healthy lifestyle? They're more likely to say, okay, well, if we solve this with these pharmaceuticals, that's the way to do it. That's how their curriculum is going to be slanted so that these medical students coming up, they're going to learn all about pharmaceutical options and not really learn about food options.
At Stanford Medical School received a $3 million grant from Pfizer for curriculum reform. So we've got NIH, USDA, FDA, medical schools, all taking money. And then you add on the professional organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics or the American Diabetes Association, which work to create the guidelines that doctors practice by, and that doctors actually, if they step out of line of what the clinical practice guidelines are, they're at risk for liability. And then these professional organizations are getting a majority of their budget from industry. You've got the
Holy cow. So even the professional medical organizations are getting the majority of their money from these pharmaceutical companies, from big food companies. That is wild. And the fact that doctors could potentially lose their license because they step out of line from these organizations, from these medical professional organizations, they could actually lose their license if they go against it. They definitely can't challenge the status quo. They can't write papers that might go against the status quo because they're going to lose their license. They're going to lose their medical license, their livelihood. Man, so these quote, professional organizations, they're also bought off.
American Academy of Pediatrics getting money from Abbott and from Mead Johnson and from vaccine manufacturers. These are the organizations that write the guidelines. So then it's no surprise that you look at the recent American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines for treatment of childhood obesity, and all of a sudden what crops up is that they're recommending as first-line treatment for childhood obesity GLP-1 agonist injections, weekly injections for kids. Ozempic.
Oh my gosh. So the pediatrics professional organization, I can't remember what she called it, they are recommending in their own guidelines that a 6-year-old that is obese get Ozempic shots. Obviously they're being funded by Big Pharma. There's no question about it. They should be recommending diet and exercise and healthy food. No, instead, they're recommending Ozempic shots. So first of all, you got Big Food injecting us with a bunch of poisonous chemicals because their food is ultra processed and disgusting. It's not even food. It's like eating cardboard. And then on the other side, Big Pharma is like, okay, we got an obese person. Let's go ahead and give them an injection that's going to make them, quote, healthy. Wild.
And so you just look at every single layer of our government agencies, how doctors are taught and who's making the guidelines, and the money is astronomical what's going in from industry. And that's, of course, going to cloud the way research is done and how we even think about health in the body. So I, as a medical student, and all my peers who go into medical school with this very noble intent to help people and to improve children's health, improve American health. We go to these elite institutions with just wanting to work our butts off. What happens? You enter a curriculum where the science is conflicted. The science that you're seeing at its most foundational level has conflict of interest, where the school has been funded by pharmaceutical industry. You know, the medical school is not getting funded by Big Kale or Big Exercise. They're being funded by Big Pharma, and where the guidelines that you have to learn and memorize and practice by also have a conflict of interest.
She said Big Kale. They're not being funded by Big Vegetable. They're being funded by Big Pharma, not Big Vegetable. That's pretty funny. But she's got a great point. So the brightest minds that are going into this profession with the greatest intents, right? They encounter science that is corrupt, research studies that are corrupt, curriculum that is corrupt, the school is corrupt, and the professional organizations and the guidelines that they put out are also corrupt. They're all being paid by Big Pharma, Big Food. Wow.
So what you get is all these doctors who, you know, you start medical school around age 21, 22. You're young, and you know you're deeply deeply trusting of this system, right? But what you see is that the body is 100 separate parts. You see that what your path is going to be is to go through 4 years of medical school and then pick one of 100 different surgical or medical subspecialties that you're going to focus on just one little part of the body. You see that really what a disease is a collection of, you know, symptoms and signs, and you don't really think about disease until it gets to that place, and then you just need to, you know, figure out what the symptoms are, label the disease, and prescribe a medication or do a surgery. You don't think about proactive health. You don't think about root cause health. You don't think about environmental factors, because that's not what being taught. And then you go into your practice and you're getting pressure from everyone around you, from the administrative staff, the bureaucrats, and the billers, to basically see as many patients as you possibly can, because you are paid by volume, which further insidiously pushes you to not think about root causes, how to really reverse or prevent disease, because that takes a long time, right? That takes long conversations with the patient.
Man, that is a great point. Man, being a doctor is so hard. If you have good intentions, being a doctor is really difficult. It's really hard to treat people when you have all these outside forces that are saying, hey, see more people, prescribe more drugs. You don't have time to look at, you know, all these other health factors. You need to see the next patient. You need to prescribe another drug. And it's just this cycle. And I actually feel bad for doctors that are really trying to do the right thing.
What's easier, what's faster, is to see the patient, label their signs and symptoms as a disease, and then give them a drug or send them for surgery. That's what's fast. And since we have this system, this incentive structure in American healthcare that's focused on volume, how many patients can I see per week? The outcomes is not really the thing that we're focused on. So you're taking these incredible, great, bright young minds and putting them to a system that at every level has conflicts that's pushing us to see the body as a collection of separate parts that's inevitable to get disease, and that your job as a doctor is to label that disease and give it a pill or a surgery. And that
label the disease, give it a pill or a surgery. So you're just looking at symptoms so that you can figure out the label for the disease and then prescribe a pill or a surgery. Wow. I mean, the way she puts that, it just makes a lot of sense, actually. And the doctors are kind of being squeezed, right? They don't really have time to sit down and say, okay, well, what kind of food are you eating? Maybe you should eat more raw vegetables and less ultra-processed food like chips and Doritos and, you know, all the other things that are out there, cereal and everything. Boy, it's really interesting.
That, unfortunately, is where we're at, and why doctors, even with the best intentions, are not focused on root causes. There's no incentive to do so, and there's little education.
Wow, that was really interesting. At least it was for me. I'm super curious about this Make America Healthy Again agenda. I'm learning all about food. I'm learning about the ultra-processed foods. I'm learning about the corruption in the medical industry. It's just fascinating to me, and honestly it makes me kind of sick to my stomach, so maybe I need to go get a prescription for some kind of pill. But I really enjoy watching interviews from Dr. Casey Means. We're probably going to react to many more of her videos, so if you're really interested in her book, again, I do have an affiliate link down below, so check that out. Also, I do have the link to this full video down below if you want to see it as well. Please come along on this journey with me. Again, I'm learning all about this, and I hope you are too. So let's learn together. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.